When your two children came in with their father and went to the bridal chambers, we slaves were glad, those of us who had been distressed before by your troubles. From ear to ear, talk spread quickly that you and your husband had called a truce to your earlier quarrel. One kisses a hand, another the blood heads of the children. I was beside myself with joy and followed along to the women's quarters with the children. And our mistress, to whom we pay respect now instead of you, before she caught sight of your two children, held her eyes fixed eagerly on Jason. But then she covered up her face and turned away her pale cheek, sickened by the approach of the children. But your husband was trying to assuage the rancor and venom of the young woman by telling her this: "Do not be angry at my family. Won't you stifle your rage and turn back your face? Hold your husband's loved ones as your own. Take the gifts and ask your father to revoke the sentence of exile from my children for my sake." And she, when she saw the fine garments, did not resist, but agreed with her husband in everything. And before father and children were far from the house, she scooped up the fine robe and put it on. Then she fitted the golden crown around her curls and with a shimmering mirror arranged her hair, smiling at the lifeless image of her face. And then she gets up from her throne and walks through the room, stepping lightly on her delicate feet, overjoyed with the gifts, again and again, casting an eye upon her arched foot. Suddenly, there was a terrible sight to see. The color drains from her face, her step unsteady. She tries to go back, trembling from head to foot, and barely manages to stumble into her seat and avoid falling on the ground. Then an old woman, one of her slaves, thinking a fit from Pan or one of the gods had seized her, let out a wail before she saw white foam streaming from her mouth, and from her eyes the pupils turned black, and the blood was drained from her skin. Then there came a terrible cry in answer to the wail. At once, one slave ran to her father's room, another to her new husband, to tell them what was happening to the bride. The whole house reverberated with the sound of running feet. But now a fast walker, turning the last lap of the course, would be reaching his goal, and the poor woman, her eyes glazed over, stirred from her silence, and with a deep groan was trying to get up. But a twofold trouble was wearing against her. The crown of gold around her head was spewing out an eerie stream of ravenous fire, and the fine robes, gifts from your children, were eating away the poor girl's beautiful flesh. She stands up and tries to escape, but she is on fire. She shakes her head this way and that, trying to throw off the crown, but all the more tightly the gold holds its bonds, and the fire, when she shook her head, burned twice as bright. Overcome by the disaster, she falls to the floor, unrecognizable to the sight of anyone but a parent. The condition of her eyes and her once lovely face were murky, and blood dripped from the top of her head with fire mixed in, and the flesh was dripping from her bones like sap from a pine, though through the hidden gnawing of the poisons a terrible sight. We were all afraid to touch the body. We had her fate to teach us. But her poor father, in ignorance of the tragedy, suddenly bursts into the room and throws himself on the body. He cries out, enfolding her in his arms. He kisses her and speaks to her. "My poor child, which of the gods has mangled you so horribly? Who has made me an aged tomb to grieve for you? Ah, me, let me die with you, my child." And when he stopped his weeping and wailing, he wanted to raise up his old limbs, but he was held back by the fine robes like ivy, by the shoots of laurel. The struggle was hair-raising. He wanted to get up on his feet, but she held him fast. If he tried to use force, she tore the aged flesh from his bones. After a time, he was exhausted, and the poor man let go of his life. He was not strong enough to fight the disaster. They lie dead together, child and aged father beside her. A tragedy that makes you want to cry. In my view, your part is beyond my telling. You will know how to escape punishment. Not for the first time I find our lives a shadow, and I am not afraid to say that people who think they have everything figured out and the masters of logic, they are responsible for the greatest folly. No human being is happy. Strike it rich and you are luckier than your neighbor, but happy? Never.
Medea is the story of a woman who takes revenge on her ex-husband for being unfaithful and leaving her for another woman. Medea was written by Euripides, who was born in Athens, Greece in 484 BC. He identified with sophists and questioned Greek religion because he loved ideas and was a realist at heart. He was a playwright that wrote over 90 plays, but only 18 survived. In the last few years of his life, he moved to Macedonia, Greece, where he died in 406 BC. Medea takes place in the 400s of BC when Euripides wrote the play. The setting takes place outside of Medea's house in Corinth. When reading Medea, I didn't really have any problems understanding it. Usually when reading Greek plays, the sentence structure and phrasing is very hard to decipher. But with this Greek play in particular, I did not struggle with understanding and comprehending the message and the meaning of the play and what the characters were saying. Also, there was no accent that I had to take on for the play. Instead, knowing that Greek plays are very dramatic, I decided to read the play as dramatic as I could be. I used expression and a loud voice to express that I was very dramatic and was very urgent in my message. There are many memorable productions of Medea across the UK, United States, and Canada. Most of these productions use the same language that the original Greek play did, but some used modern designs on stage. Mike Bartlett's production of Medea in particular was unique because he added new characters for Medea to talk to and added more emotion and thought into the monologues of the play. Mainly, critics have high reviews of the productions of this play. Medea is a story about human nature, and that is why it is still produced today. At the end of Medea, she kills her two sons in order to take the ultimate revenge on her ex-husband. The thought that a mother could kill her own kin for the revenge of someone else is thought-provoking and intriguing and scary. Viewers and readers still find Medea important because it is not just a topic, an idea of the Greek times, but it is still a thought that we think about today. What human nature would do when emotions get the best of them.